There we go, live. Welcome, everyone. It's not our usual night, but we are so excited to end up and be here. How are you, my darling?
I am. Happy Thursday. We are definitely excited to be on here. We have a very special guest that we actually tried to track him down a couple years ago. He's a hard person to get hold of, but we finally got him. Who am I talking about? Well, we are going to talk to Robert Sikes. So you may know him as the ketogenic bodybuilder, but he's actually a coach, an author, a homesteader, a husband, a father, and a creator of Keto Savage and Keto Brick. He and his wife, Crystal, have built multiple businesses from the ground up, literally sleeping on the warehouse floor for years while growing Keto Brick into a thriving operation that it is today. Now, as Keto Brick celebrates its 8-year anniversary, Robert continues to lead with the same discipline and integrity and deep commitment to living in alignment with his values that started it all. So let me remove that. Let's bring Robert on. But Robert, before we begin, I want to personally thank you. I am the grand prize winner of the Organuary Challenge, and I can't even begin to tell you the massive amount of keto bricks that I received from you in this awesome cooler. And I was talking to, I think it was Ellen. We were emailing back and forth, and I'm like, "How did you know what to send me?" And she goes, "Oh, I went and looked at what you've purchased before." And I was like, "She. I mean, I am like set for quite a while. I am so excited." But the cooler, I don't even think you can buy that cooler, can you?
You can now technically, but yeah, we're about to launch an apparel line with a whole bunch of gear, and that will be one of the items for sure.
So I'm one of the first few, huh?
You are.
Well, we're truly honored to have you on tonight. So, just starting out, what inspired you to support the Organuary Challenge?
Well, James at Pluck was kind of like the ringleader of it all, and James and I have been friends for years. I've actually coached him throughout various periods. He and I speak at many of the same conferences. We're actually working on a couple collaborative efforts ourselves, and I've got a lot of respect for James and what he's doing and making quality organ meats more accessible to people. So anything that I can do with good people, I'm all about. So it seemed like a match made in heaven, so to speak.
Well, I love it. Well, congratulations on Keto Brick's 8-year anniversary. I've been getting all the emails in about, I think earlier it was like 72 hours left.
Hmm.
So, for our audience, can you go back and tell us, like, from idea to product, what made it unique?
Well, the keto brick was never really meant to be a product. Like I was ketogenic. I think for about 4 years before I ever made keto brick, and I never planned on it being a business that I'd sell to others. It was just something that I made for my own personal consumption because I started keto before keto was popular, and there were no keto products out there, and certainly none that fit the macro profile and calorie count and just convenience factor that I was looking for. So I set out to make my own, and then I was documenting my first ketogenic competition prep, and I would eat, I would showcase my nutrition, and then that was on camera. And people kept asking about what is it, what's the recipe, where can I buy it? And I just kind of wrote it off, but then it just became evident that there was enough demand for it that my girlfriend at the time, wife now, Crystal, we just rolled up our sleeves and started a food product business. And, we were making these by hand, one at a time with a measuring cup and a fork. And we stayed up all night making the first batch, and then we put them on the website, and they literally sold out in 2 minutes. And we're like, okay, we got to have
Wow.
viable business here. So we just took it from there and have grown it gradually ever since.
So you said that you were doing keto before keto was popular. What initially led you to adopt that type of a lifestyle? I mean, it's been like over a decade ago. And how has that transformed your life beyond just the physical changes?
Yeah, so I was bodybuilding when I was a junior in high school, and that would have put me, I don't know, that would have been back in 2008 or so. And I was super scrawny. I was the skinny kid. I didn't ever have any confidence. I wanted to, build muscle, look good for the ladies, probably was my initial motivation. So I started trying to do everything I could to build muscle. And all the wisdom out there at the time was just eat a lot of carbohydrates for energy, eat a lot of food in general. So I was eating a ton of food. I bulked up to 6,000 calories and about 230 pounds. And I started at 115 pounds. So it was pretty significant increase. And then my first competition, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just started dieting, doing a ton of cardio, traditional bro dieting, high carb still, lost about 80 pounds in 12 weeks for that show. And I won the show and I got really lean, but I developed a bunch of eating disorders in the process. That night of, I put on like 20 pounds literally overnight. And that just kind of became a negative feedback loop, downward spiral that plagued me for years. And I started playing around with multiple different diets to find what I could consume that would improve my relationship with food and just seemed healthier. And then I kind of fell into carb backloading by accident. And then noticed that I felt better without the carbs. So started doing what is pretty much keto, carb backloading without carbs. And then that was back in 2014, I believe. So at that point, there wasn't really any blogs or books or recipes or influencers out there in the keto space. So I was one of the first in that realm. And then I just started diving into it, learning about it, and then kind of implement it from a bodybuilding standpoint and took it from there.
So as a natural pro bodybuilder, I mean, you've been on stage, you've got amazing rewards. What do you say to those? Because it's a hot topic right now, right? Whether carbs are needed. So what do you end up at say to those that are kind of doing the pushback to keto?
Yeah, I get a lot of pushback. I've gotten pushback since I started doing keto. And at the end of the day, like from an athletic standpoint, athletes are prideful people. And I feel like people can argue about the nuances. They can point to whatever cherry pick study they want to. But at the end of the day, from an athletic standpoint, your record, your track record is your accolades. And I can point to the competitions that I've won and I'm beating my peer group who is consuming carbohydrates. I get leaner than they do. I hold on to more muscle than they do. I'm never going to be the biggest guy on stage, but that's honestly from a genetic standpoint more than anything. So I just win the competitions and they can't really say anything. So that's been my best plan of attack to kind of beat the naysayer, so to speak. But you're absolutely right. There's always going to be pushback, especially from the conventional dieting wisdom. And it's just very different. And since I used to compete with that protocol, I took a lot of that insight and knowledge and built from it and then kind of implemented a ketogenic approach to it. And there's pros and cons to everything. But from a sheer muscle building standpoint, I feel like where keto shines is that I think muscle building is pretty much on par, even if there was a slight benefit to having elevated insulin by consuming more carbohydrates. And insulin is an extreme growth agent. So you could argue that it could increase overall muscle growth relative to a ketogenic approach. The ketogenic diet shines tremendously when it comes to the fat loss portion and the muscle preservation in the context of a deficit. And at that, when it's all said and done, I feel like the net outcome is better than what I ever, experienced with the carbohydrate approach. So I think at the end of the day, it's only benefited me.
Gotcha. So in other words, this method that you kind of were just explaining, I'm going to assume is what you adopted when you created the Keto Savage method. And what makes the ketogenic bodybuilding, savage, right? What other than the fact that you are the savage, right? How does it differ from the traditional carb-based approaches? I mean, obviously you took the carbs out, right? You're not focusing solely on that as a primary, like the bros do with, their chicken and their rice and stuff. But how does the Savage method differ?
Yeah, so I pretty much developed a 7-phase protocol, and there's going to be some overlap. Like obviously with a carbohydrate approach and with a ketogenic approach, I'm still manipulating total caloric intake and, training and cardio. Like there's going to be some overlap and similarities there for sure. What's unique about my approach from a ketogenic standpoint is that I'm obviously leaning on fat metabolism over glucose metabolism. So carbs are pretty much non-existent throughout or very minimal throughout. I keep my dietary fat quite high, especially as a percentage of total calories. And my protein, I make a manipulated variable. That's a lever that I can pull. So most conventional bodybuilders will have a set it and forget it approach to protein. They'll just have a set number and hold that constant. Whereas I will manipulate that throughout the different prep phases and where my goals are. So I'll typically start. So just kind of an overview of my 7 phases. The first phase is pretty much establishing a baseline. So when I'm working with clients and I'm going through a prep myself, we'll get blood work drawn, we'll get composition photos, we'll figure out what their metabolic and hormonal baseline is. And if they're starting from a healthy enough caloric intake baseline to go through a prep or a fat loss phase in a healthy manner, then we'll pretty much start at that maintenance intake of calories, but with a very high fat ratio. So about 80% of calories coming from fat, and then probably capping total carbs at 10, 15, 20 grams total. So that in and of itself is quite a contrast from what conventional bodybuilders do. Because fat will be so high, protein will be relatively low. And then as I go through phase one, that's pretty much establishing that baseline. Phase two is increasing protein while simultaneously decreasing fat to find that individual's unique fat to protein kind of threshold, so to speak. At that point, I'll start decreasing protein as well as fat. So overall calories are dropping this whole time. And then at this stage in the game, calories in general are getting lower. So then we'll transition to phase 4, which would be the introduction of ketogenic caloric refeed. So as calories are dropping, metabolism is down regulating, hormones may be taking a hit at this point, body fat is dropping significantly. So I'll implement a strategic caloric refeed where I'm getting them a bolus dose of both fat and protein. That kind of gives them a stoking of the metabolic flame, so to speak. Plus it from a psychological standpoint makes the lower calories more sustainable. And then from there, that's pretty much where they'll peak. And if they're competing, then I'll manipulate electrolytes slightly, hydration levels slightly, and just hone things in for stepping on stage and competing optimally. But depends on what the goal is. Like if it's a bodybuilding goal, it's obviously going to be a physique peak, whereas I've worked with powerlifters, more of a performance peak from a lifting standpoint on show day, and same rules and principles apply. After that show and peak is over, I'll transition to phase 5, which is basically the continuation of those refeeds, but with an increase in total calories. And then phase 6 and 7 is basically returning to a baseline point where they can return to some degree of normalcy, have dietary fat, protein, and body fat increasing so that they can kind of return to some degree of a healthy baseline post fat loss phase, and then focus on building muscle and improving baselines across the board. Kind of a long-winded approach there. I could probably graph that out better than I could explain it, but hopefully that made sense.
Oh, no, it made perfect sense. In fact, Becky and I have used your macro calendar.
Perfect.
So it's a useful tool. But not only that, but then you have a podcast as well.
I do, yeah. It was the Keto Savage podcast, and I started that back in 2016. I rebranded it to the Savage Perspective podcast because I have so many different types of guests on. Obviously, the undertone is nutrition, performance, athleticism, things of that nature, but a lot of mindset guests, some entrepreneurial guests, all different kinds of walks of life. And we're almost at 900 episodes now, so I've been putting out quite a few episodes over the years for sure.
Wow. So interviewing guests, how has it shaped your own view on keto and the businesses?
From a ketogenic standpoint, it's only affirmed what I've experimented and done my whole life up to this point. I mean, we're all kind of our own N of one experiment, so to speak. And when I distill down, I mean, keto is interesting. I mean, y'all have been in the space for quite some time. You see all these dietary hypes ebb and flow. Keto was really popular, I think, peaking in 2017, 2018 via Google Trends, and carnivore dieting took over, and that kind of, is the new hot topic now. Then you've got the vegan diets, the protein sparing modified fast, the high carnivore or high protein carnivore, the low protein. There's so many different variations and nuances here. And I've been in the space long enough to see all these trends come and go. But when I distill what keto is down to the essence, it's simply an emphasis on eating quality, single ingredient, nutrient dense foods, prioritizing fat metabolism. And I feel like that, from a metabolic state standpoint, will certainly stand the test of time. And it just seems like the most realistic, healthy, sustainable thing to do. It's what I certainly feel the best doing. And I feel like it's best for the environment. And I mean, honestly, just from like a consumer standpoint, you vote with your dollar. And I feel like supporting local farmers and ranchers, and you're getting into homesteading yourself. I like the fact that I raise the majority of the meat that I'm consuming, or I've hunted it, I've harvested it myself. I feel like I'm contributing to the betterment of my fellow human being and community, as opposed to just a drain on society, so to speak.
Absolutely. So, speaking of homesteading, right? How has that changed your mindset as well?
Well, I've always been blessed to kind of grow up in a homesteading state, so to speak. I mean, I was I was hunting from a very early age, so I wasn't raising my own food, but I was definitely harvesting my own food as soon as I could hunt, as soon as I was old enough to hold a gun, basically. And then my parents had quite a bit of land, so we raised chickens and sheep and horses and everything. We didn't eat the horses, but we raised everything else with them. And then now that I've got my own land and I've got kids and a wife myself, I can do that on our own accord. And we have chickens, we have sheep, we have pigs. Right now we got 4 pigs that we're raising that will be slaughtered in a few months. And it's just cool to know where our groceries come from, so to speak. And I feel like so many people, especially if you're eating meat, like you need to be able to understand and appreciate the entire circle of life. And I feel like raising your own food and hunting is the single best way anybody can do that. And I feel like as long as you're respecting the animal and honoring that animal and not wasting that food, everybody benefits. So it's been great in that regard for sure.
Well, so I subscribe to your email, and so I was reading the Sundays that you sent out that you're getting more chickens.
Yeah, we had chickens and then we got a dog and then we didn't have chickens anymore. But now we've got a chicken yard that I've built out that is dog proof. So I believe we should be good. Hopefully we'll keep the chickens. So as long as the dog doesn't find a way to get into the chicken yard, we should be good. So we've got 20 birds, 19 hens, and a rooster. So we go through quite a few eggs. My youngest is about 8 months old now. We're introducing food to him. And a lot of, eggs is a pretty safe food to introduce to a newborn, or an infant rather. So he'll be eating eggs. My older son, who's almost 4, he eats a ton of eggs. My wife and I eat a ton of eggs. Every time I sit down to eat eggs, I eat about a dozen at a time. So we eat a lot of eggs at our house.
I love it. I love it. I can't believe your littlest one is that old already. It feels like you guys just had him.
I know.
Time flies, right?
It does. It does.
Um, so, what do you wish people understood about or advice that you would give someone that's just starting keto for their general health, not necessarily an athlete that they're going to get on stage or anything like that, like, you know, grandma. What advice could you give?
Yeah, like progress over perfection, and that kind of rings true with everything. But certainly as it pertains to dietary and movement patterns, progress over perfection. It's better to be 90%, 100% of the time than it is to be 100%, 10% of the time. It's something I like to tell people. A lot of people obsess over perfection to the extent that they, beat themselves up if they're not perfect, and they just deviate tremendously. So you got to have it sustainable. Whatever it is, it's got to be sustainable in life. The compounding nature of what you put in your mouth every single day is going to add up and accumulate to result in your outcome, for better or worse. Same thing with your movement patterns. So when it comes to somebody that's transitioning from standard American diet, wherever their diet is, no matter what their age is, just make healthy swaps. You don't have to obsess over tracking every morsel and, logging every food intake. You certainly can progress to that area. But if you're just starting from a standard American diet and eating a bunch of junk food, just simply focusing on real, wholesome, single ingredient foods, primarily from animal sources, you're going to, that's going to be a classic 80-20 breakdown right there. And you're going to get a ton of benefit just from that. Once you plateau in doing that, then you can start peeling the curtain back and tracking things and, manipulating a few different variables and getting things measured and honed in. But just get some momentum underneath you first. And a simple way to do that is just remove the distractions, remove the food noise, and eat real food to begin with.
So one of the things you mentioned before was the trends, and with this, progress over perfection, right? Everyone's looking for kind of that next fad, the quick fix, and you see it a lot, especially more so on Instagram. But what about like the trends, like the sugar diet, for instance, right? It's been popping up in a lot of spaces where they're looking at dropping that body fat rather quickly, right? What is your take on something along those lines and these fads that are popping up?
So I actually did not a spoof, I don't know what the right word would be, but like a comparison of the sugar diet using the same metabolic pathway. So basically FGF21 is the metabolic pathway there for the rapid weight loss. I mirrored that with a very high fat, lower protein approach, just to kind of show that it could be done in the complete absence of sugar as long as protein was minimal. Now, I would not recommend anybody do that for any length of time. And that was kind of the whole point of why I conducted the experiments. When it comes to anything, it needs to be sustainable. It can't be a short-lived fad. Me being the leanest man alive when I compete at, 3.9% body fat is definitely not sustainable. I would never advocate anybody do that for any length of time. But undulating between periods of surplus and periods of a deficit, in bridging those together in a sustainable fashion, is healthy and is optimal. It's the perfect yin yang relationship. And everybody would benefit from that, whether they're in a, whether they're competitors or not. I mean, the general population would benefit tremendously from that. You don't want to be excessively in a chronic deficit or in a chronic surplus. Like, you want to have periods from a metabolic standpoint where you're transitioning through, a building phase and a cutting phase, and you want to keep that within reason. When it comes to things like the sugar diet or any other fad for that matter that promises really quick results, it oftentimes comes at the expense of metabolic health, hormonal health, and psychological relationship with food health. You got to make it sustainable overall. And when it comes to fat loss, you want to focus on fat loss more so than just weight loss, because obviously you don't want to lose muscle. A healthy rate of loss when it comes to body fat is about 1 pound a week. Nothing's going to be linear. You may have a period of time where the weight increases, where the weight decreases, where the weight stays steady. But if you're averaging, 1 pound a week lost, that's a relatively healthy rate of loss. And if you're doing that, you can not be near as aggressive with the caloric reduction. You can hold on to more muscle. You can, be more slow and concise with the dieting approach. And that's going to make it more sustainable in turn. Plus, you're going to preserve a lot more muscle and preserve performance in the process. And with muscle, everybody would benefit from that. I feel like society is starting to embrace that reality much more now, both male and female. Muscle is the longevity organ. I think people are hearing that more. Mm-hmm. Muscle is kept and preserved when it is in demand. And you can't keep that muscle in demand if you don't have energy to fuel those movement patterns, whether that's weight training traditionally or just simply going about your day to day. And you can't optimally do that if you're not fueling your body appropriately. You can't fuel your body appropriately if you're dieting too aggressively. So it's got to be gradual. It's got to be very slow and steady. When I'm going through a fat loss phase or a competition prep, or when I'm working with clients I'm manipulating fat and protein grams in 5 or 10 gram increments week after week after week over the course of 12, 24, 30 weeks. So nothing is ever drastic. And by doing so, if I take away 1 egg a week, you don't even really miss it. Like, it doesn't even register. Whereas if you take away 1,000 calories a week, you're now left with 1 less meal or 2 less meals than you're used to. And that's not sustainable at all.
Yeah, you're white knuckling your way through, and that's where you end up and getting back into the eating disorder side of things, because you're typically binging on something, right? Mm-hmm. You've created too much of that deficit, and so then they're nose deep in, the sugar, essentially, exactly. Not in a good way. But, and I think you kind of nailed it right on the head of, you can even overdo a healthy food. Right? Anything that you are eating in surplus, I don't care, even if it's just meat for a person, you can gain weight on it, right? You can gain weight on keto. You can gain weight on carnivore. And that's where people, I did fat fasting, which is essentially what you were, lowering the protein, increasing the fat. That's essentially, same thing. And that was one of the things. It works great, but it's not long-term. And same thing, with anything, when people are so used to this underfueling and really bringing their metabolic rate down, and then they start to eat, right? Maybe they hear about carnivore, maybe they hear about keto, and then they start to gain weight. Well, because they've increased the volume, they've increased, even though it's healthy, and they're like, oh, this don't work. Not necessarily, but yet, I also advocate for carbs, so I'm not solely keto anymore, but it's one of those things where anything of a good thing, it's just that nuance and that conversation has to be had, and someone that knows what they're doing, not just saying, go out and eat 5 steaks a day and be sedentary.
Yeah, 100%. And that's honestly one of the biggest frustrations I have with so many people in the carnivore space specifically, but keto as well. It's like they put such an emphasis on just the insulin hormone with no regard to total consumption. But I mean, you can absolutely put on body fat if you're eating too much of the highest quality foods. I mean, like when I'm eating, I mean, I literally eat the exact same thing, whether I'm in a building phase or a cutting phase. The only thing that changes the amount is the amount of that food. But I put on body fat when I'm in a building phase, eating that same high quality food. So yeah, the dose makes the poison, so to speak. But it's oftentimes not even poison because you need to have periods where you're eating at a healthy surplus, and giving yourself that period of abundance. So many people spend so much time chronically dieting, and that's what oftentimes down regulates their hormone, their thyroid health, their metabolic function. Like you have to ideally spend more time building in a state of abundance than you do in a state of scarcity.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to be clear, we're not talking about the fact of, going keto and then having cheats, or we're talking about, strategically refeeding and bringing that back up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's what reverse dieting is. I mean, and it's a common term in the bodybuilding circles, but I mean, like I said, it would be advantageous for anybody to go through a period of reverse dieting, especially if they've just been chronically under eating for far too long.
Oh, definitely. So, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to circle you back to Keto Brick for a minute. And what was your first flavor that you made?
The first flavor was mocha, which is interestingly enough one of our least favorite flavors, but that's all we had for the first year and a half or so of the business.
I actually like the mocha, but
I like the mocha too, but it's yeah, that's the OG.
that's interesting. And then you guys slept on the warehouse floor. Like you guys lived how long?
Yeah, so we started the business when I was in Washington. That's when I was just making it for my own personal consumption back in 2017. We launched the business as a business in 2018. We're celebrating 8 years now, so March of 2018. And at that point, we were living in Arkansas, but we were leasing a commercial kitchen in Central Arkansas, 3 hours away, by the hour. So we would load up the truck full of all the ingredients, drive down after a full day's work, stay up all night long making these bricks by hand, and then load everything up, drive back 3 hours. I mean, there were so many instances where I don't know how I didn't have a wreck, like literally sleep driving. No sleep, no rest for the wicked. Then I started, it started growing. So we, hired my cousins and friends and family to come help. And then from there, we started leasing a commercial kitchen that used to be a chocolate factory. And then we started with one building, and then we kind of graduated to 2 and then 3 buildings. And that one we had a 3-year lease on. And that's the one that we lived in, one of the buildings, one of the offices in one of the buildings. So yeah, we lived there on the warehouse floor for 3 years, building the business. And now we've got this facility that we own, that has the podcast studio, our gym, and then the commercial kitchen. But it's been quite the journey for sure.
So, what was some supply chain type scaling nightmares that people don't realize that a business goes through? And how hard was it for that non negotiable quality of ingredients? Like, did you really have to fight once you started growing?
Yeah, this podcast could become a freaking several hours long here. Lots of headaches. I mean, when it comes to business, especially food business, especially quality food business, like if somebody, came to me at the onset and handed me a stack of papers that had all the headaches that I would have to deal with over the years and said, "Hey, this is what you got coming to you." I don't know if anybody would do what we do, but you don't have that at the beginning. You don't know what you don't know. You don't have that perspective. So you just chip away and you overcome obstacles one day at a time. That's just how it works. But yeah, supply chain was a massive headache. The cacao butter is our primary, fat source in these bricks and had been for years. And, because it's so high in stearic acid, it's shelf stable. It's like a nutrient powerhouse. But then in 2024, there was a global shortage of cacao butter. So literally our pricing more than 6x than I would have gone out of business had I not found a solution. I went to Brazil for 10 days. I was like trying to meet farmers down there, trying to like troubleshoot and figure out a solution. And that's when we started doing, tallow, grass finished tallow as an alternative fat source. So now we have cacao butter and tallow based bricks. So that was a massive headache, but kind of a blessing in disguise because obviously people like the tallow bricks as well. So yeah, all kinds of stories like that, just, nonstop headaches. Every single day is a headache. But one thing that you learn in business is how to think on your feet, how to be resourceful, how to be resilient, and how to problem solve. I mean, I've grown as a human, as a leader, because I can just, adjust, adapt, and overcome. And that's what business is.
Oh, wow. So, what would you tell your younger self now that you know what you know? What would you go back and what's that one thing you would tell you and Crystal? Like, okay, guys, this is what you need.
I don't know, because I mean, we're still fighting. Like, we're still fighting. It's a different kind of fight, but I mean, it's still definitely a fight. So, like, I don't even know that I don't know if you ever make it, so to speak. Like, you just pushing. You're just fighting the good fight every single day. I think if I could go back, I've probably legitimately shaved who knows how many years off of my life from stress and lack of sleep, which is funny because I'm a health guy and I promote health and I'm trying to, advocate for that. But there's no telling how much stress I've caused myself and the years I've shaved off my life as a result. So I think if I could tell my younger self, it'd just be simply like, look, you're doing the right thing, but life goes on, and come hell or high water, you'll make it work. You'll figure it out, but just enjoy the process as I do now, but just like be at peace and don't sacrifice as much sleep as you had probably.
What is a customer story that has stuck with you?
That's a good one. I've had several like people that have consumed the bricks because of chronic ailments, or just inabilities to consume certain foods, especially because they have, you know, different ailments or different sensitivities rather, but they can tolerate the bricks. So like I've got, multiple stories. I literally get an email every single day about how something has changed their life or transformed them for the better, improved their health. But like so many instances where they like have um, older parents or grandparents that literally do not eat enough and they're just withering away. And they can't consume a ton of voluminous food because it's exhausting. But having them consume a brick, which is calorically dense and provides them quality nutrition, gives them ample nutrition to see it through the day and have another day. So that those have been really insightful. Several people that have had diabetes, like I've had people that had diabetes, like I even got one guy that I had on the podcast way back when I first started the podcast. He's a type 1 diabetic. He's an airline pilot. And he literally had his license stripped from him because they weren't, I mean, he wasn't able to regulate his blood sugar while flying to the point where they could prove that he was safe to fly as a pilot. So like he lost his career, he lost his ability to support his family, and then he started eating the bricks, and he did other things. So like I'm not claiming that the bricks were like the saving grace, but like he started doing the ketogenic diet, used the bricks on a regular basis to keep his blood sugar and nutrition stable, and then was able to get his license reinstated and support his family again. Like things like that. I get stories like that all the time.
Mm,
That's
It's pretty
amazing.
cool, pretty rewarding.
I'm sure it's touching, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
probably never thought about that side of the business either when you
Mm-hmm.
got going. It's like how impactful it is. I know that I've taken the bricks, I have melted them, and I poured them into the little mini muffin and portioned them out. So I knew exactly how much I was getting at times for to meet my macros for that day. So yeah, I mean it's just been wonderful. Gosh, it's been years I've been using your product as well. I think you too, Becky, haven't you?
Yeah, I was to say I've used the bricks because of course I think I honestly, I mean, I followed you on Instagram, but it was really through Ben and Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all right here in Nebraska. So I think that's, where it really ended up and come from.
Yeah.
That or maybe Crystal when she ended up and had her side of,
Oh, yeah.
Instagram, which, hey, shout out to the woman because Crystal is the saving grace as to why we were able to have you on tonight. So
Yes.
Yeah. Crystal's a
she's
rock
the
star.
VIP.
And honestly, it's like we've kind of, it's funny because she and I've done so much together. Like she's been my right hand throughout all of this journey, but now like she's playing full-time mom with the kids, which is just awesome. Like she's got her whole, I mean, she's got her work cut out for sure. She's incredibly busy. So I've pretty much taken over the business and she's taken over the home front in that regard. But yeah, I mean, like I love the fact that my kids love the bricks. Like the fact that my, Rigel is almost 4 years old. Like he eats a brick every single day. That was one of the first foods that he started eating. And like he loves it. Like just that in and of itself. And that's the case for so many kids. Like if they have a healthier alternative instead of going to the school lunches or the candies in the grocery stores, like so much brain development happens in those, pivotal early years. And if they can eat enough fat, quality protein, and no sugars to thrive and have that development take place at a much, better, more effective rate, like that's a huge success story. And it's just awesome. That's my own kid doing it and many other kids.
So speaking of kids, do you have any intentions, looking forward to making like smaller bricks for kids? I mean, obviously, for anyone that don't know, the bricks are pretty good size, right? Yes, you can chop them up. Like Sherri said, you can end up and remold them into something smaller, but do you have any intention on making something that's a little bit smaller for kids?
Probably not. I mean, there's definitely inquiries and people request smaller bricks. I personally just eat one whole brick in a setting. They're 1,000 calories each, so a lot of people don't do that, which is understandable. But it is totally easy to cut up or to melt down and re-solidify. But the thing is, it was actually more expensive. It would be more expensive for the consumer to have a smaller portion. There's more touch points on our end if it's smaller. The packaging would be more involved if it was smaller. So like the cost per calorie would actually increase for less food. And I want to make it, efficacious for everybody and like not cost prohibitive for everybody. They're already expensive, but they're not expensive on a cost per calorie basis. Like they're actually cheaper than a Snickers bar and obviously much, much higher quality. But the thing is, there's also a million different bars out there. So if I'm trying to compete with other bars, it's just a sea of noise. Whereas if I'm something totally unique and it's got that wow factor because it's massive and savage, then it's like, okay, it's a whole nother conversation in and of itself.
How do you come up with the different flavors?
So I've kind of got a system. I basically, what do I personally crave? What have I heard back from feedback from the market of what people are wanting and looking for? What type of nutrient profile am I targeting? But then once I have those kind of baseline things established, I formulate every single one of them. I formulated all of them. I don't have a flavor house that's third party. Like this is me formulating these based off of the macros and nutrients that I'm targeting, micronutrients that I want. And then I'll order this ingredients. I'll make a sample brick. And then we'll all sit around the conference table as a team, and then we'll just cut it up into pieces and we'll all try it and see if we like. We actually did that today. We had 5 different test flavors that we sampled today actually, and we're pretty close on 2 of them, I think. So I'm not gonna divulge any more than that. I'll tease it a little bit, but yeah, we're always testing something.
I want to end up and be part of the test party. That
Me
just sounds
too,
like fun. Sitting in the conference
right?
room.
Yeah, come on. We got a gym here. We got the podcast studio. We got a whole bunch of bricks. So come on and be a taste tester.
Hey, I'm within drivable distance. I'm in Texas, so there we go.
There you go.
I'll be up now. Well, I think it was 3 years ago or 2 years ago. It was when Hack Your Health was in Austin. I think it was 2 years ago. And you had brought in, it was only for Hack Your Health, and it had walnuts in it. Do you remember that?
Was it the maple pecan?
We had a maple pecan, but that wasn't exclusive to Hack Your Health. We did have we had a peanut butter Tallulah that had, I don't know if that had peanut butter nut pieces, but it was peanut butter and tallow. And then we had a blueberry muffin that I think was exclusive to a conference. But those are the only 2 that I think were super small production runs.
It was the tallow butter maple pecan, because I ended up and I bought 6 of them and I actually flew home with them.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, I think I went back and bought more too. And then I think it was your cousin that waited on me, and he was like, "These are the last ones." And I'm like, "How many's left?" And he was like, "I don't know, like 5 or something." And I'm like, "Right here." Like, and I bought the last
that's
of
why
them.
I love those conferences. Like I love seeing everybody in person, face to face, having a booth there. It's a good time for sure. I enjoy it.
Well, it's nice you can go and sample them, and that's how we find out. And that's how my husband even found out he liked them as well. But you also sold shirts.
Yep. We've got the apparel side of the business too. So we have that in-house. Like everything we do is like in-house. Like I like actually doing it myself. there's not enough creators out there like creating. So yeah, we've got a screen printing press. We make our own shirts. We're actually going to relaunch our apparel line later this year, but we're relaunching it because we're transitioning away from, like, it's going to be a whole new website, whole new everything. Like, we've got it built, but y'all haven't seen it yet. But we're changing from our current designs and fabrics, and we're going to be offering exclusively natural fibers, so non-endocrine disrupting, natural stuff. So from a hormonal standpoint, it'd be much better there. But like hemp, cotton, bamboo, nothing with polyester or anything like that.
How hard was that to find?
It's challenging, especially athletic wear. Like, everything is overseas and it's all polyester because it's all cheaper. And the same thing with food. People, big companies, big corporations, they cut corners to save a buck wherever possible. And for me, it's like, obviously as a business, I can't be losing money, but my goal's always been more so to make a difference than to make money. So as long as I'm able to make a difference and stay above water, then that's what I want to do. Like, I want to offer solutions for people so that their life can be improved upon in every form and fashion, with the content that I create, with the food products that I put out, with the clothing that's on my back, like everything. I want to be full stop, one stop, everything you need.
So, what is a dream podcast guest that you haven't had on yet?
That I haven't had on yet.
Yeah.
What would be a good one? I've got, that's a good question. I've never had been asked that question before. Well, I'm starting to dive more into the parenting side of things because I've got 2 kids now. So like, there's some really impressive, parents out there that, I think would be a perfectly fitting guest for the Savage Perspective, especially now with the rebrand of the podcast. So I'd love to get them on the show. From a nutritional standpoint, man, there's so many of them. I've had Dom DiAgostino on a few times. I think the world of him. I've had him on before, obviously, but he's a wealth of knowledge, wealth of information. I've been diving into the spiritual realm of things too. So getting some of those guests on the podcast. There's a whole bunch of people in that genre that I have not had on the podcast. So I couldn't pick just one. There's just so many different ones.
How you mentioned the kids and kind of transitioning. How has fatherhood specifically reshaped the success, or what it looks like for you now compared to your early days in competition days?
Well, I still compete. I typically take a few years off in between competitions. Like when I did my 5 shows in 2023, like Rigel was with us on all those. Like we were bouncing across the country in a little, camper, and he was in the middle seat. I mean, we're going to make him as involved as possible for sure. But from just an overarching lifestyle design standpoint, having kids has forced me to be much more protective of my time. And that's like my weak point. I tend to just say yes to so many things, and I'm a bona fide workaholic, but that's not a great thing at all. It's a good thing to work and have a good work ethic, but not at the expense of giving yourself margins and time to spend it with the people that really matter. And I feel like having kids has forced me to audit where my time is going, and I am very protective, much more so than I ever have been, of that time. And if it's not like a positive thing, like if it's I just don't have time for noise anymore. I don't have time for trolls on social media. I don't have time for negativity. I don't have time to mindlessly doom scroll or watch a mind-numbing Netflix show. Like, that's just, I have no desire to do any of that stuff. I want to spend time working, helping people. And then anytime that I'm not doing that, I want to be with my family. I want to spend time with them. I want to make memories with them. I want to be a present father figure in their life. And I want to spend time with my wife. Now, that's been a tricky one because it's like we're both moving in the same direction, but we're going in 2 separate tunnels. And every once in a while, I see a little window and I can wave at her. But it's like we're both just going a million miles an hour. So that's been challenging, but we're making it one day at a time.
But Crystal's a pretty much go-getter too. I mean, I can remember Crystal in the gym working out, 9 months pregnant, and you're there, being her spotter, and even the kids, Rigel on the floor while she was working out. It's like, you're both very go-getting, and I think that's a fabulous trait to look at, for the kids to look up to as a parent.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, she is a savage in her own right, for sure. Having 2 kids, is way different than having one kid. I mean, it's like exponential challenging for sure. Cause like with two, I mean, when we just had the one, like she could do her thing and be totally isolated while I have him, and then we could swap. With two, it's like, there is none of that really, it's like, especially since Hazen's so young, like he's just, I mean, he's breastfeeding nonstop right now. He's just wants her at all times. So like, it's hard for her to hand him to me for 5 minutes for her to take an undisturbed shower without him just screaming and crying, which is, very challenging, but but it's just a season of life, and we're just embracing the chapters that life brings us when we're in them, for sure.
Well, what's one question you wish people would ask you, but they never do?
You get all kinds of good questions.
I'm sorry. Look, I've been wanting to have you on our podcast for a couple of years now, so they've been formulating.
Oh, nice. I like it. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Well, I think people, like, I like it when I go to these conferences. I mean, y'all have seen me at conferences. I feel like oftentimes I go to these conferences and people find me hard to relate to because, they're older than me, or they have no aspirations of competing. It's just a hard gap to bridge, so to speak. But I would like to I want everybody to think of themselves as a bodybuilder, like identify as a bodybuilder. Whether or not you decide to compete or not is a totally different story. But bodybuilding is the simple art and nature and lifestyle of emphasizing moving and making the most of the body that you're blessed with and fueling it appropriately. And if everybody thought of themselves as a bodybuilder and focused on doing that to the best of their ability, my messaging would resonate a lot more, because what I implement in myself, what I work on with my clients, like it applies whether you ever plan on competing or not. And I feel like if people just recognize that, I could make a bigger difference, but they could actually reach their compositional and health goals much more efficiently. So that, I guess, kind of a long-winded response to your question, but the question that people need to ask is, how do I identify as a bodybuilder, and what do I implement to improve my health and function and fitness as a result?
So what would you tell someone to help them bridge that gap and see how they maybe align with you when they're not even, at a gym, and they're maybe just starting with like body weight movements, right? That it's still going to end up and be, weight movement, but how would you end up and tell someone that is at that point, right, a beginner level
Mm-hmm.
compared to you? Because if they end up and are sitting back and they're like, well, I'm not them. I don't end up and look like that. I don't end up and go to a gym. That's not me. Or maybe they've even hit a plateau. They're kind of feeling, kind of in between. What would you end up tell someone like that?
Yeah. So from a training standpoint, it's just a basic concept of progressive overload. So that is going to be totally, specific to the individual. But I mean, are you all familiar with Nurse Cindy?
Mm-hmm.
She's a rock star, but she never worked out, and she literally, like, I was in her ear to just start moving her body, start training, just start with where she was at. So she literally just started doing squats, body weight squats from a chair, and then progressed from there to resistance bands, and then some light dumbbells, and then into like machines, and then free weights. But literally, the next time I saw her, she looked like she had lost 15 years. There was like a zeal in her eyes that was not there before. There was a glow, like just a youthful glow that was ever present. And it was simply because she started making improvements to her health and function. And she started with just simply squatting down to a chair and standing up again. So progressive overload is just simply doing more than what you've done previously. For me, that might be adding another 5 pounds to a 500-pound deadlift. For somebody else, that may just simply be walking 10 more steps down the hall than they did the last time. You got to start somewhere, but start with where you're at, recognize where you're at, and make progress from that point. That is progressive overload, and that is applicable to everybody, whatever their aspirations are.
And I think that's the key takeaway, is the fact that as long as you are better than you were yesterday, like you said, even just those 5 steps, right? It doesn't have to be this well-formulated, plan put together. It's simply parking a little bit further away and walking, or, like you said, doing some squats, right? We all end up and go to the bathroom. So, end up and doing extra, squats up and down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, around meals to help with blood sugar, all of that ends up and adds up. But I think the biggest thing is people don't put the emphasis because they're looking at the performance in a gym. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where they're trying to gauge. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think our listeners need to end up and hear from you to help them bridge that gap is you don't have to be the person lifting, squatting 500 pounds or doing, deadlifts or, any other 300-pound bench press or, anything like that in order to be enough. It can just be where you're at and adding a few of these, new habits and stacking them in there. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't ever want anything I say or promote to seem daunting to the point where it becomes limiting to anybody. I mean, like my mom, I got her to start doing keto about 3 years ago now, and she's been consistently doing it. She didn't have a whole lot of weight to lose to begin with, but she's built a lot of muscle. She's lost unnecessary body fat and built a ton of muscle. She's recovered much better from a few hip surgeries that she's had to go through. She's literally retired now and sailing around the world with my dad and is way more capable because she's got better diet coming in the system and is just more resilient, more robust from a muscle building standpoint. Her joints, ligaments, tendons are all better. I mean, she's seeing the world and experiencing it on a whole nother level. Right now they're in the Bahamas, and it's because she's able to function at a higher capacity because she's healthy. And she's not doing leg press and squats and bench press out there on a sailboat. Like, she's using some resistance bands and some body weight stuff, but like that's affording her the ability to keep getting better every single day.
Thank you, Becky. That was very much geared at me, just so you know, Robert. I have resistant bands literally down by my feet that I never get out. And so she's always, but I
You got to
did
get
it.
them.
I
Hey,
know, but I
but
walked around my block at work 2.5 times today. And when I went to get the mail and come back, I took a long way around. So I'm getting some more, and I'm taking the steps, not the elevator, things like that. So yeah, those
Nice.
resistant bands, though, I need to dust them off.
Yeah,
it
you got
wasn't just directed at you. I mean,
Mm,
there's a lot of clients out there too, but there's also those people that are more in, like we have a community member that is headed for the Arnold Classic. And, so that's, I mean, I would love to end up and see you at the Arnold Classic, squatting, I think what was the top weight? 1,080, 1,090, something like that. It was
Mhm.
set several years ago, but yeah, that next challenge for you.
I've got a client that's going to the Arnold. She's at the Arnold right now. She's competing as a power lifter,
Wow.
squat, bench, deadlift, and she's like throwing up some crazy impressive numbers. 70 years old. You know,
Wow.
it's like
Mm.
she's going to break a record this weekend at the Arnold at 70 years old. And it's like, if that isn't the fountain of youth, I don't know what is. Resistance training and a ketogenic diet, quality diet. I mean, like that's like she's killing it. I'm proud of her. And that's within everybody's reach.
absolutely. Well, I'm going to bring this video on here. And this is the unboxing that I did with that cool cooler. But look at this thing,
Nice.
it's chocked full of bricks. Like, I'm like, oh, and I got this, and oh, and that's when I'm like, how did you guys know what my favorites were? Like, it was just crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
Ellen's got you fixed up. Ellen's a sweetheart.
she is, she is. I've met her a couple years. She was at Hack Your Health, I think,
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago, I think. Yeah, so I met her there, but yeah, I was like, "Oh my, look at that." Like, it keeps going, like, clear down to the bottom, so but I was excited, to get that, but thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Congrats on winning.
it was crazy. Isn't that crazy that I won? Because I thought, "Oh, I like pluck," and, I think it was, what, 2 years ago, Becky, when James, had, uh cooking, and you could try the raw liver and the
Mm-hmm.
and so we went to that and we did that, and it was like, oh, it kind of changed my mind on some organ meats for sure. So, and I love the pluck seasonings as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I
I
use it
use
all the
those
time.
all the time. Yeah, I do too. But um, we want to be respectful of your time. I know Crystal has been so gracious. And by the way, we would love to have her on from a mom perspective. If she
Yeah,
is ever interested, let us know. We would love to
totally.
have her. But what is a lesson you hope your kids absorb from watching you and Crystal's life?
I hope that they see us pursuing something that we are passionate about and striving to serve our fellow human at a higher capacity. I feel like true fulfillment in life comes from service to others. And I feel like from a health standpoint, the healthier you are, I mean, we've all only got one body. We've only got one vessel to move through this world in. And I feel like taking care of it is one of the most selfless things that we can do because it allows us to serve others at a higher capacity, serve our kids, our spouse, our community, God at a much higher level. And I feel like I hope my kids see Crystal and I striving to do that to the best of our ability and empowering them to pursue where they think their passions are and their interests take them so that they may do the same thing in their own unique way.
What's next for you, personally and professionally?
Personally and professionally, so personally, it's just we've got the two kiddos that I'm pouring into. We're gonna start homeschooling Rigel before too long here, so really kind of diving into that. I'm super excited about that from a personal standpoint, and then professionally, we've got the apparel that we're going to be relaunching, and then we've got all the content that I do. We've got like the online course that I have. I've poured so much into that, and I just want to really get the marketing of that dialed in so that it gets the exposure that it deserves, and people can use that as a resource. So getting that dialed in, and obviously everything with the Keto Bricks and growing that venture as well. So lots of stuff from a business standpoint.
Absolutely. So people can find you at ketosavage.com.
Hmm.
They can find you if they want to order the Keto Bricks. They can go to ketobrick.com. Where else can they find you?
The course and coaching and all of the content that I put out is pretty much at ketobodybuilding.com.
Okay,
Which
good.
is that your whole program that also includes like AI that answers the way that you would answer? I mean, you've poured a lot of time into
Oh,
that. I'm
yeah.
not quite sure the whole depth of it, but
Yeah,
you,
it's a lot. I mean, like the course itself is like 200 something videos, and there's a membership group. Like I do a weekly live call on that. We host challenges. We do all kinds of deep dives on various topics. I've got a free workout app that I just give to people for free. Like it's not free to me, but I want to just make it easy for people to have the tools they need. So free workout app. It's called Savage Strong for people to use. That's what I personally use every single day when I'm logging my lifts. We got the AI. We got the book. I mean, there's lots of stuff that goes into the content that I'm putting out for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I could ask you a ton of questions. Both of us could on the AI aspect, but we'll have to have you back. So,
Absolutely.
Robert, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom and the heart behind everything. It just shines through. And knowing who you are at the last number of years on my journey to health, you're a force, and it's about alignment and intention and living a life that feels true. And Becky and I really are grateful for your presence and your generosity and your example that you are definitely setting for this community. So, any last words that you want to uh, impart before we let you go back to your family?
Well, first of all, thank you so very much for the opportunity to come speak with you. I apologize it's taken me so long to to make it happen. That was not my intent, so sorry for that. But at the end of the day, kind of going back to what we were saying earlier of things that I've learned, being protectful of my time, auditing my life. One thing that just really resonates, especially with AI and social media and all this interconnectedness that the world is now seeing itself in, the thing that matters is relationships and community and camaraderie and people. And I appreciate y'all having me on. I appreciate seeing y'all at the conferences. I appreciate what y'all are doing and interacting with people in the space. I mean, we're all fighting the good fight here, and it all stems from pouring into people in this community. And I feel like as long as we keep doing that, we can keep making progress. So my hats off to both of y'all for the good work that y'all are doing. If there's everything I can do to help move the needle in y'all's corners, just let me know.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, mark your calendars because Monday, yep, this Monday, March 9th, we are having Chef James Berry himself on. He's actually the second time we've had him on the podcast. And just so everyone knows, he is the founder of Plex Seasonings and the creator of this Organinuary challenge. And he even took his mission all the way to Shark Tank. So we're going to ask him questions about that. So we hope you can tune in. And if you are loving these conversations, make sure you like and subscribe and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear Robert's mission. It helps our community grow, it helps his community grow, and it ensures that you never miss an episode. And thank you again, Robert, for the generous keto bricks and the package and your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's been a pleasure of ours.
Thank you.
Absolutely.